Chris Jones, otherwise known as Jonesy. Who calls you Chris or Christopher or whatever?
Uh, my mom.
Your
That's
mom.
it.
That's it. Wow.
Oh,
And
and family,
yeah,
but it's always dad or pops or
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. And he's been kind of legendary in the intelligence community for at least a couple of decades, I think.
I would say since I showed up as a non-Air Force guy, probably early 2000s.
Yeah, yeah, a couple of decades.
Where'd you come from before that?
Well, I was just telling Carmen that I got lashed into Intel when I was in air college when I was planning on being an astronaut, and I figured, all right, test pilot, the whole thing, Air Force, ROTC, and then my eyes weren't good enough, so they said, "Oh, you want to be an engineer?" I said, "Sure," and then they said, "Great, we're gonna make you Intel," and so I did Intel for the Air Force for 10 years, and then I got out from the uniform, but I stayed on with the one condition that I could be a contractor out in Denver and stay doing operations. So basically staying in the middle of the fight and things like that. So that's how it transitioned into the contractor world from
So
there.
this is like before they did surgery on people to improve their eyesight, right?
Yeah, this is way before they allowed LASIK, and I wasn't necessarily a candidate for LASIK as well. Um, and what's funny is I actually met Robin Olds, the guy who instituted the Air Force and the policy for eyes. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "No, it's not your fault." I said, "Yeah, it is my fault. I started that policy." And
Mhm.
in today's day and age, you don't need good eyes to have to fly a plane.
No.
It's all good. But it led down to a great path because Intel itself as a trade craft is great and it's very important for national security, but it sure does involve a lot of people and a
Mhm.
lot of interaction between people. And so I did not expect a right turn to happen in my career, I would say around 2005, when I started to interact with the people and how they're interacting to do intel, not so much the science of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where things just kind of went crazy.
Yeah, you're differentiating something that's near and dear to our hearts, which is how
Hmm.
things actually work from how things are supposed to work.
Yeah, it was a great realization because it was like, you're trained that intelligence is by the book. It's kind of a formatted process of information and data and production, then go back and collect and production, TC pad, the whole thing. But then when a team and I, so we started up a cell over in Denver called the Mission Situational Awareness Cell to keep our operations aware of what was happening. And we found that the very best source of that information was not like written reports that we must take the database.
Oh my God. I'm
What?
shocked.
I'm
I'm
shocking Carmen.
shocked.
I'm shocking her because this is how Carmen and I first got connected because I was kind of watching what she was saying way back in the day, and we're just like syncing. Is that the way people interact with each other can lead to a lot of fast moving knowledge, and that's sometimes more important than just the information and the data, and the understanding and the wisdom that goes with that. So these human levels above information and dabbling in that world, it was happening in chat, and I in the Air Force had no idea that this chat thing was as big as it was. I was in my little rabbit hole doing my thing like everybody else was. And then when I discovered, holy, there's all these chat channels. What are they doing in here? Then I started to read them. And to me, it was just like one big, and I always had this mental image in my head of a party. And everyone's standing around with red solo cups. And they're all in these little groups where they're having their conversations. And there's a host of the party who kind of mingles and makes sure that people who are kind of standing on their own kind of get brought into the conversation. Let me introduce you over here to Paul. Paul does this and that and the other. Paul, why don't you say hello to the group? And then I go off and do something else. So we started looking at the chat as information and eventually started leading the chat rooms, leading the behaviors, telling people, you need to basically give to get. You need to be open. You need to be trusting. You need to be trustworthy. You need to be socially connected and look for psychological safety. And look at all these words coming out of my mouth. You don't get this in Intel school. It's like we were discovering that the secret sauce that was making this hyper dynamic, very rich intelligence world had nothing to do with the information in the data as much as it did the behaviors and the discovery between the people. And it was back to we peel that open. We started studying it. It's like, this is natural human behavior. Yappity yappity. It doesn't get much more basic for communication than talking. And in today's world, if we can't be near each other, we're doing it via chat. And so we figured, okay, then we're on to something very basic. That basics are express yourself, be courteous, be professional, be good, be these things. And who teaches you that, Carmen, in until school? No one ever taught you how to do
Buddy.
that because you didn't need to. You're writing a report. You don't need to. But once you started interacting, you had to behave certain ways to make it all work.
If anything,
And
if
so,
anything,
yeah,
if anything, the on-the-job training, not so much the Intel school, although perhaps a little bit of that too, but the on-the-job training as an intelligence analyst uh, kind of suggests that what you're supposed to do is defend your position
Mm.
against
yeah,
others, and that what you're looking for is to gain enough status that
hmm
it's like you get extra force shields around your position because,
sure,
oh, I'm a senior analyst now, so
notoriety.
that means you have to be, you have to use the big tank to defeat
God, that
my point of
sounds
view.
so much like academia.
Well, sadly,
Oh yeah,
yes.
and that's the in face-to-face interactions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the people got translated into this virtual version, a lot of them lost the how do I possibly relate to you if all I've got was my words? I
Mm.
haven't got a face. I haven't got any non verbal cues.
Nonverbal cues. Yeah.
I've got nothing than that. This is much better, of course, but if you're in chat only, then we had to train people how to kind of go above and beyond and add some extra words in there that kind of portray what you're thinking and feeling. And if you are being sarcastic, be very careful because sarcasm
Mm.
doesn't always translate. And we did it a lot by role modeling because we would role model with the people of these chat rooms as we talked to each other, our team, and as we talked to people, we were very courteous, very explanatory, very clear. And believe it or not, they started to copy us. And so that was just one of these eye-opening things for me. The magic for me, though, was to see what would happen when the people did move quickly and actually talk to each other. Decisions were being made very quickly.
Hmm.
Unknowns were being identified really quickly, and things were being tackled quickly and fast and more effectively. In the end, lives were saved. Can't say that enough. Doing great things. Can't say that enough. But then about 2012, I was talking to my team and I was like, we've stumbled across something here that's very naturally human, can be taught, and we can give it a name, collaboration operations, collab ops, is doing operations collaboratively. And this could apply to any business you want. If you have a lot of people who just need to work together on different topics. And most specifically, what if the secret sauce is that it's compelling? It's life it is at stake. People feel like they need and must talk. Then what's the corollary outside of the military? And it was disasters. That was the first thing that came to our head.
Of course.
Fast, chaotic, life at stake, probably similar mentality. So we saw Katrina go down, and we were like, ooh, wow, coordination's needed there. Boy, sure wish we could help them. And then we thought, well, why can't we help them do that coordination like we were seeing on the military side? That kind of baked for about a decade. And then I started looking at some of the ways that the disaster community actually does coordinate with each other, thinking, okay, I'm surely going to find a very similar brother or sister kind of methodology here. Didn't find that. I found kind of 1995 email, meet in person. If you're on the field, it's going to be radio, radio, radio. This concept of chat, not there. I was like,
Mm.
well, that's interesting. Okay. I tried to introduce it. So a lot of people are like, why would I do that? Why would I chat to other people for a crisis? And I would try to say, because it works. It did for 20 years, 30 years in the military. And there's no context. They can't go, oh, then I totally get it. Uh, when I explain, imagine a day of everyone is in a single big chat room and you're instantly able to share with each other what's going on. Yeah, that'd be great. then how come we haven't built it if it's so great a concept? So yeah, that's how it kind of led to this bubbling of an idea, turn that sword into a plowshare. Um, and then I
And
was
is
telling
the
Carmen,
first iteration Conversa Corps?
yeah, it was basically the concept of doing it as a nonprofit. Yes,
Mm.
numbers of years of thinking of that. And then I was telling Carmen about late 2022, um, it came to be like, you know what, could be the time to do that, to actually jump out and make that actual jump. And Carmen, about golden handcuffs and those kinds of things. And I thought, I can probably do it then. And so started a nonprofit called Conversa Corps, which means conversa, to converse, and core, CORPS, for people who are conversing. The idea, bring all of what we learned, the tradecraft. We did fellowships to teach people how to do this, the nuance, the psychosocial, the sociological, the anthropological side of it, all of that. Bring it out, but use it for a different purpose with the same kind of role of operations. So we started Conversa Core, I would say probably in, let's see, we can incorporate February of 2023. And then shortly thereafter, I'm like, well, I guess we just start a chat space. We picked a tool. We use Slack. It was the closest to our old tools. And we said, okay, we're going to go ahead and just do what we did before, facilitate. We facilitated the chats before. We'd call ourselves facilitators. But we needed some disasters to go after. So we started working on Ukraine. Um, that was before we incorporated. Then afterwards, a few hurricanes here and there, some tornadoes here and there. And then as I brought a team on, it was much more rigorous. We had a lot of former fellows, or sorry, number of former facilitators helping us out with this chat, but there's a missing component. First of all, the people had never done this before. They're very alien to this chat world. So those that did get it, there just weren't enough of them to get what's called critical mass to get it rolling. And so then Hurricane Helene happened.
Mm.
We had a lot of people sign on for that one. So we started getting this critical mass, and people started going, "Hey, we can actually collaborate our efforts in here." And then the LA fires hit, and that's even more of the same kind of thing.
Ah.
So now
Is that
it's
how your
grown to,
son Joseph got involved?
Hmm.
uh, yeah, because of LA, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep. He lives
And a
right
lot of
in
people are
LA.
asking the door. So we have this premise, if you can do this, it's got to be for basically the motto is help the helpers, the
Hmm.
people who are providing help, not security people, not intelligence, not government, not NGO, everybody who is helping humanity and the planet. That's it. However you do it, if you are a social worker, if you build shelters, if you do transportation, if you provide supplies, finance, doesn't matter. All of you people talk in one space. And that's a mind blow for a lot of people. It's like, well, how are you going to get all those people together? So there's no problem getting them in there. It's a matter of when they're in there, a lot of people in LA especially came with, whoa, that's way too much. Way too many channels. I don't even know where to start. I'm like, find a channel that has a name on it that you do. That's a good one. Logistics, remote sensing, science, technology, whatever you do, find your clan, your tribe, your people. Talk to them and then watch, because we are all going to do something together here. We're all going to go to a disaster that happens, and we're going to try our best to work together here to support those who are boots on the ground. That's the key. So it doesn't matter how far back you are in the support. Even if you're like a researcher who does models for wildfires, heck, yeah, come on in. Somebody might need that. So that's the kind of the premise, and people are definitely jazzed about the concept. So that's good. That's how it kind of evolved.
Hey,
So let me,
Jonesy, can I? Oh, sorry.
you go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I think we both have multiple questions.
Yeah, you
So,
go first.
okay. Um, so one thing I keep thinking about when you're talking about, there's two things. Okay, two things. I don't know which I'm going to say first. One thing is that you've taken something that is normally considered soft skills, and you've
Mhm.
operationalized it, you've made it essentially a technical skill. How do you help people collaborate? And what's
Mhm.
profound about that is usually that stuff is considered unnecessary. Like we have the essential workers, and that's not part of the essential workers, right?
Absolutely.
And I love that you're saying like, no, this is how the essential workers can actually work, right?
Can I
Am
do
I getting
that
it?
that one first? Can I do the second one first? That is a premise, a primo premise about the whole thing. Ever since day one, when I was taught by the machine to work, which is 33 years of the machine, the way you operate is very transactional and it's data and information. How you do it, don't worry about it. Just figure it out. And then they move on. Wait, go back. So if I choose to improperly communicate to you, I'm not doing it the right way. If I sent you something on a stone tablet, that's not the way you should probably get my information. Okay, a bird, a message, a email, one-way email, or a phone call. Choices I make a difference. And this we discovered during the COVID days. A lot of the national agencies, all of them, that was trying to help out with collaboration across the federal government during the onset. And they were left to their own devices. Just use whatever you want, was the basic ethos. If you want to use just text message groups, God, that's fine. If you want to just use email groups, that's fine. But they didn't think through, oh, you know what? If I do that, who am I living out?
Yeah,
Yeah, is this the right way to do it? Where would you go to learn the right way? And so there's that soft skills, communication skills, I would say is even more specific. Not taught, not needed because you can figure it out. Everybody knows what
right,
email is.
right.
It's considered today in today's world to be a natural thing you just got to know how to do. But I think that if I was going to say, set up business policy for a corporation, I would say teach your folks that you can't just pick up any old communication thing out of the box and say, this is the one I'm going to use and it's going to be fine. They all have goods and bad parts. So the key about this soft skill that's become technical, how do we help them collaborate? First of all, set up an environment that allows for discovery. Number one big word for us is discovery.
Yeah.
If I already know you guys, I'll put you on an email queue. I mean, on an email list, and we'll collaborate all day long. But what about the guy that's not in our group that probably should be, but I don't know him, and he doesn't know that we're having this conversation because he wasn't on the email chain. He wasn't in the Teams channel. He wasn't in the WhatsApp signal, you name it. So he was left out. He could have discovered our conversation if we did it in the open.
Hmm.
Means in a space where he can stumble across our conversation and go, "Oh, there's a keyword. Oh my gosh, that's I can totally help with. Hey, my name's Jack. I can help with this. Or I've got a question. Can I get you some information?" So discovery is key because back to that party with the red solo cups, if people just naturally mingle in like a plaza or an arena and they hear conversations. They come across expertise. They learn just by watching
Mhm.
conversations too. The young ones learn about the things from the old ones. If you imagine it, it's a very basic human behavior, social behavior, is watching the words of others, getting to know what they're saying, having a vested interest in it, weighing in, stepping in, having a conversation with them. And if they are experts in something and you're not, you might learn something by just watching their conversation. So set up the chat space so that all the channels are open as much as you can do, like 95% open, so people can naturally browse around. So that's not enough. You can't just turn on the space and say, technically, done. You have to have these facilitators in there to say, hi, Julia, welcome to the group. I notice that you work for this corporation, and can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And you'll tell me what you do. And I'll be thinking, as a facilitator, I know all the channels. I am the host of this party. And I can say, Julia, I think there's a few channels I think you should join. because you could discover it by its name. Otherwise, it might take you months before you find your tribe. And I'm going to help you matchmaking to a person or a group that I think you're going to jive with.
You're really
And
good
then
at that. I mean, by the way, you did do that for me. I mean,
that's the
so,
funnest part of the job is
yeah,
truly,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like interacting with the people like that to guide them. And they go, you know what? Thank you.
Mm.
That's it. Oh, what's a thank? Just that's it. So say thank you, and then we watch them interact. And we'll watch a channel. And if a channel starts to become unnourished, psychologically unsafe is a good way to kill it for sure. That's like acid. If somebody's very hostile, whatever, we'll take them on the side. As a host, I can take them to the side in a direct message and saying, "Hey, Ellen, the way you kind of put that, it's just gonna put a wet blanket on everything. You notice everyone stopped talking after you said that? Yeah, because you kind of scared people. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Like, yeah, that's kind of how it's coming across, but I can help you. Why don't you and I have a conversation in front of the others and be as nice as you can to me, and I'll be nice back, and then they'll just roll right back in. Watch. And then we'll do that, and they'll roll back in. So you're being like, you're fluffing up the conversation. Old mentor and the beginner of this whole concept was a guy named Myron Stevenson. He we used to have a saying, what would Myron do? He was the most courteous professional in a chat space you'd ever seen in your life. And we saw people just follow like Pied Piper.
Mm.
Every time he would do something, would try to emulate Myron. Um, so yeah, you facilitate the channels in their conversations. You watch for dead spots. You inject a question that you know is provocative just to get people to talk. And if they see each other talking, they'll lower the bar of formality. They go, oh, it's not so formal in here. I'm going to weigh in. And that's how you do it. You maintain that across all your channels, and then it becomes a very comfortable space. No one's in charge. Everyone's in charge. And they feel very safe. And all of a sudden, they open up. Now you've created the nourishment of the soil that allows them to interact the way they should professionally. And then you can just actually roll back and just say, okay, keep doing that. Keep doing that.
Yeah, right.
And that's how it goes.
So
That's a fun job.
I uh, I, I wrote down this question, and Jonesy, I don't know if you know, Julia, maybe you know. Are we the only animals that converse? I don't think we are.
No,
No
But
way.
not at all.
by converse, I mean, have an extended interaction of ideas, you know, more mundane things like events, things that have happened, feelings,
The
but
food's over there. Things
sorry?
like that. Like the food is over there.
Oh,
Like the
yeah.
bees, they do.
Yeah, the bees do a lot of what appear to be functional things.
Right.
But
I think whales are
I mean,
doing it.
whales and dolphins immediately come to mind.
I think elephants are doing it. Their
I
sophistication
think
is
trees do it a lot too.
the
Oh,
trees,
plant
yeah.
intelligence is a huge
They're
Yeah.
topic, right?
the
Probably like
mycelium in the trees.
octopus.
Oh yeah. Have you seen
Yeah.
Octopus Teacher? My Octopus
Yeah, oh my
Teacher?
Oh
God,
yeah, my God,
octopus
what it's
teacher.
great.
It's on my
Yeah.
Yeah.
favorites list.
My husband
But
and
yeah,
I, when it's
I
really
agree.
cold, we walk around the house when it's really cold and we don't turn on the heat and we say octopus teacher, because he learned how to be in the really cold water.
No, but what you're saying, Carmen, is, we sometimes exchange abstract ideas, and I would say that in the early parts of these online environments, the conversation, the sharing of the verse can be very unfortunately mundane and informatic. It's facto. For example, during Helene and LA fires and most disasters in the first 48 hours, a lot of people don't have any real ideas to share yet. Or, hey, let's work on this. Can we do that? What should we do here? They're not asking those questions. They're just trying to get their own assessment of how bad is it? What's our SA, or situational awareness? So the information that's being posted is dull. It is the same very important stuff, but the fires moved here, the bridge is out here, the flood just happened here. We're seeing reports of deaths over here. Fact. When the humans now combine their knowledge and their wisdom behind that and say, okay, all right, folks, we kind of know where things are right now. What should we do first? What should we do second? We, all of us. Come on. I want to hear it. What do you got? Decision making, planning, those higher cognitive things happen. And it's not hard. Somebody has to start the conversation and people going back and forth. But if I just met you guys, I don't know if I would trust you that much with my deep thoughts on exactly how this is going to go down. The best thing is we met 3 months ago before this, during the sunny days of summer. And we got to know each other, trust each other. So now the disaster happens, then you say something and I'll say, no, Carmen, I think we got to do this way. Honestly, we got to go that way. And Julia will weigh in and go, no, have you considered this? Yep, that's true. We gotta think about that. Now things are moving. And that's that higher level of conversation that you would hope to get. And one of the best things is when you have 600 people in the channel with you and young ones, people who are brand new, didn't do this before, learning from the old ones, the ones who are the wiser ones and say, this is how we did it last time. I've been doing floods for 20 years. Guys, this is definitely a thing. The young ones learn that by just watching those conversations. So it's a pretty cool environment.
It's really special.
Well, I mean, if you
Feels that way.
just, if all this sort of writing and one of the most evil words, documentation, that exist in bureaucracies is really, well, you used the word transactional, but it's also sort of about quality control, or they think the defenders of it say it's quality control. And a lot of this quality control actually stops the necessary process to inspect the quality.
You got it
Delaying
exactly right.
delaying what needs to be done. So when I was a manager in the analytic part of CIA, I always had this dream. We've got to figure out how we ensure quality without stopping the process
Yes.
to do the quality thing. And I always thought that quality, because I'm an optimist, could emerge organically
They
from
can.
some kind of organic interaction if we just figured out how to facilitate that.
If we were three of us in a room, we would go right through the what's true, what's not true, what's a mystery, what's a
Yeah.
rumor. We work through it before one of us picks it out the door as a final product.
Mhm.
And Carmen, I know exactly what you're talking about because it happened numerous times for me in the IC. One example, and I'll keep it as clean as I can. Basically, very important thing happened. Agency A is responsible for telling everybody what would happen with that event. There were some certain nuances that needed to be shared with other agencies in time to do something about it. Agency A says, we aren't going to get this out the door until we know everything is perfect. So 12, 18, 24, 36 hours later, they've got what they in their mind is the most accurate depiction of what happened. And it was true, and for the most part, but because it was so late, the value had dropped to almost nothing. And so the
Right.
other agencies are, do you realize that if you had just given it to us in an honest way that says, it's not finished yet, but we did see something here. You might want to do something about that
Mhm.
while we finish our report. I would only do that if I trusted you. I trust. I would only do that if I could even find you or you can find me. So let's play that all back. You, as an agency A, say, hey, folks, we just saw this. Here's a basic synopsis of what we saw. We're putting together a report on that. We're working on it now. And it is what it is, folks. This is like not off the record, but it's basically this is information as it's growing. And everyone else goes, yeah, I get that. I totally get that. But let's follow this one piece down a little bit further. Does anybody else can corroborate that? Can anybody else help provide more knowledge, understanding, things they heard in the morning meeting, things they saw in a report that helps put this puzzle together? to take it out of the mystery stage into that's pretty darn solid. Those kinds of things happen in these chat channels. And believe it or not, the smaller the channel, the more likely you are to get disinformation and misinformation to flourish.
Of course. Right.
Because there's
Yeah.
only 3 people, 4 people checking your stuff. And I heard this all the time when I was in the IC. You're going to get somebody killed. You're going to get somebody killed with what if I put in there that I got shut down once for the first time I put a tweet back when Twitter first started. I think it was 2009. I put a tweet into one of our official chat channels. Some major from Europe shut the whole channel down. You got to stop it with that Twitter stuff.
What?
That's just a bunch of rumor. I'm like, it could be,
But
but
it's really helpful
I'm
to know what people are saying.
yes, plain and simple. They're just saying it. All it shows is somebody said that.
Yeah.
And then the next thought is, why would they say that? That was
Yeah.
specific. That was very specific. Why
Yeah.
would they say that? And then if I put that out there as folks, you all know what Twitter is, right? Okay, it was a tweet. Get it? Fine. Don't run with it yet. But what do we got? What else we saw? And I said, you know what? Somebody says, you know what? I saw something else very similar, like 5 minutes before that said this. Well, I saw this and I saw that, and I've never seen this, and that's wrong because of that. After about 15, 20 minutes of about 500 people talking about it, oh, it's pretty much either BS or it's going for it. It's real. That was so fast. And I'm like, now that they never taught me until school was
Right. Exactly.
how to, as a group, work through rumor, work through misinformation. And that happened a lot in North Carolina for Helene. And
Oh
it
my God.
wasn't that people
Yes.
were they weren't purposely trying to be disinformational. They were basically saying, all I know is X. And the crowd gets used to the fact that if you say, folks, preliminary information, it's all I know. I heard this from so and so. Take it for what it is, but blank. Um, if they start getting those habits and everyone's starting to piece things together, and that's another thing that humans in the written world, um, they can't always cite where they hear things, and they can't cite what they know that it's not so solid. But if you just tell the other people in your crowd that you're talking to that that's the case, they can put that into context, and then we figure things out faster.
Yeah.
How do you get agency B to have a better relationship with agency A so that agency A feels comfortable passing over this information at
Oh,
an earlier
be
stage?
you have to start with being nice, and we've had some people come in, either individuals representing an organization, immediately toxic, and we have to tell them you got to just pull it back, man. Just be very professional. But when you're asked, well, first the motto is give to get, not the other way around. Give first in the channels. Offer up new information that you came across, that you're just trying to be helpful, folks. Feed the nourishment of the soil of those channels to help feed the knowledge of others. And they'll say, you know what? Jonesy keeps bringing up great stuff. I like him. He's a good guy. He's offering first. Before you go right into, all right, I'm in this channel. Can you guys give me X, Y,
Right.
and Z?
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, we probably could. But if you're going to suck our energy out, and you know the whole energy exchange market, if you're going to suck the energy out of everybody else in the room, you're just ask, and not task. Uh, we'll look at you as, oh yeah, you're just here to gain information. You're not here to actually contribute. That sense of camaraderie, that sense of teamwork falls out the window. But if you come in and you're always that helpful person, man, the like factor starts going way up, and positive energy starts to flow every time you're in the room. That does happen in the virtual world too. And so we've had some people do that, that a lot of the North Carolina folks helped in LA. They were in the same chat rooms from the previous 3 months.
Mm.
And they just, no questions asked. They helped out. Somebody said, we need masks, we need air filters in California. People in North Carolina were working on it. No one ever said, can you please? No, they just jumped right in. That for me,
Yeah.
art pitter patter right there. Because it's like, wow, you were doing purely human stuff there. So all of a sudden, your reputation in the channels across the groups is super high. So,
So in these chats, as a
mhm.
facilitator, I mean, so we've been talking about, whether or not people are helpful, whether they're toxic, but I'd like you to talk about whether or not you've noticed people who have cognitive skills, such as intuition, for example,
Mhm.
or pattern recognition, probably intuition's little baby brother. Uh, can you see that in the chat? Uh, uh, or do people in the chat recognize it in other people? Like I can see, I'm going to wait until
Hmm.
Stella shows up in the chat because, boy, she always has a very
The perceived
important and
expert.
useful insight. But
Yeah.
that's expertise. I'm just wondering whether or not you've noticed anything sort of beyond or different from expertise. Like when the North Carolina people show up in LA, in the LA
Yeah.
chats.
Yeah. That expertise is usually the very first one you'll see early on. Somebody who tends to have a great and very accurate and helpful answer to most questions, unafraid to answer, unafraid to contribute, doesn't seek to be recognized. But you're right, that is expertise, knowledge base. Um, those who are predictors are very hard to spot because a lot of people will take their prediction as speculation, and that's just your opinion. That's all it is. If you're right continuously, then you're seen as somebody who has some good intuitions early on, but maybe it's me, but I'm not sure if people are sensing that subtle difference
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
they may not know that, that- hmm, if they're young, you're always assuming that they're unwise, they're unknowledgeable of many things. If that young person seems to be saying some amazingly perceptive things, that would be a good intuition to you, but you have to be kind of tuned into looking for those kinds of clues. Unfortunately, a lot of the chat world, you don't know people's age, backgrounds per se, so you can't piece it all together. And that's where I think it kind of drops off.
Mm.
But I would say the best thing to do is look at what happens in the real world. And if you're talking with real people in an arena, well, how would you sense that they are, you know, empathic or they are able to see or have a vision beyond what other people have?
I mean, you could just feel it. Like I feel like the answer that most people give is kind of the answer you first gave, which is like over time you get the data and you sense it. But I really think you can feel it from the way someone is. It's almost like an energy, right? Like, so even if you can't see even if you can't have Zoom meetings where you meet the people who are most active in a channel, and so you can't see each other, by the way people use their words, I mean, I feel like you can feel energy in words. I mean, is this crazy?
Yeah.
I feel like it's true.
There's certain word patterns, where colloquialisms in human language, especially English. There's certain ways to say things that tip off the fact that, hey guys, you ever thought of blankety blank? You ever thought of this? Out of the blue is usually
Yeah,
a good way that nothing prompted them. They weren't answering a question per se. They just
right.
had this out of the blue idea that came
Yeah.
in. And I remember back in the military, they used to kind of put that down sometimes. Oh, here comes the good idea fairy. Um, but if you're
But
super
some people
tuned
can
as a
actually have good ideas that way.
oh yeah, exactly. And that's how else do they know how to entree that idea into the room except just do it. As a facilitator, I would spot an out of the blue comment like that and jump right on it. To first think, first of all, I need to support this person by answering, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more? Because if I don't and it goes dead, it's like speaking at a party
Mm.
and that awkward feeling of no one responded to me at all.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go get another beer, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to, as a facilitator, be ready to go watch that question. Give it about 30 seconds. No, give people a chance to read it. And if no one else says, man, what made you think that? That's awesome. Even if you have no idea what they're talking about, say, that's awesome. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And they would be like, okay, here's what I'm seeing. I sensed this, I saw that, and I thought this. And I'm thinking this now. Now, from that might be just enough to tell me, where in the heck did your mind go for that? That is extremely perceptive. But because that conversation is in our chat room forever, somebody can scroll across that tomorrow and go, wow, that's a thinker. And I'll just kind of chop that up in my head as that person tends to come up with some amazing ideas. that's the closest I think you can do to finding somebody who is truly perceptive beyond transactional.
Mm,
Yeah, spot those language patterns.
mhm,
So we've always wanted anthropologists and linguists as facilitators
mhm,
because we feel that our study in our field is so close to that.
mm.
Right.
Is really need experts.
I think it's very close to psychology.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We have a psychology. You've seen the channel before. It's
The hearts and
we
minds.
call it Hearts and Minds.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a lot of those folks to not look for the functional side of when a disaster happens, providing psychological help. That is amazingly important. But we had psychologists come through our fellowship before, when we were teaching people how to do it, and we asked them, now turn the tables. You tell us, here's how we facilitate as an art. What are we
Mhm,
missing?
mhm,
What clues could we be looking for, people who are contributing, not contributing, balance of energy, the words they say, the way they say it, and how to spot somebody who may need some help, those kinds of things.
mhm,
And that's psychology. And then we talked about, okay, the socials of the anthropods and the human species and how they interact as groups. Why does that group go off on its own? This group goes off on its own. Why aren't the tribes liking each other? And are there any tips to help tribes love each other? You know, um, it's funny how it applies in the chat world, but it was learned in the real world. So bringing that stuff in would be important. So I've always loved having non-scientific, non-technical, non-disaster related people rolling
Right.
in and saying,
right.
uh, there's an interesting thing happening here. So
I got
Very
a
cool.
chance about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, to take a course where I spent a lot of time over a 1 year period with military types, like
mhm.
uh, colonels, mostly
Yeah.
people about to become flag officers. And there was an Air Force guy I was talking to, and as you know, all Air Force guys have nicknames. They have their
Look at
name
my
and then they have their nickname.
Jonesy.
Yeah. And so anyway, he, the 20 years ago, women pilots in the Air Force were finally kind of there was a quantity of them.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me uh, the impact that women pilots had on the Air Force. And he said, the conversations after our missions, when we go to the club to unwind, are so different now that women are part of those conversations. Different and better. I
Mm,
mean,
Yes.
this is what I'm quoting him. He said that, and he wasn't just talking to me. There was like a group of us. And he said, before the women were there, and this is sort of stereotypical, so please correct me, but I'm just reporting what he said. Before the women were there, the officers club after mission happy hour was, well, I did this. Oh, that was a great maneuver you pulled, blah, blah, blah. It was a lot of brag. And
Absolutely.
once the women arrived, it became much more collegial,
Cerebral.
and learning focused.
Yeah.
So your comments
And
on that?
DEI is absolutely important in these spaces too, because
well, is it
here in
DEI or
the
is it just, I mean, let's just we can reframe that, right? Is it DEI or is it just simple belonging where everyone feels
well,
like they belong?
it's a dynamics from the dynamics perspective. A diverse crowd way better than a crowd that has singular mindsets,
That's
singular
just a
approach.
fact. Yeah.
Just a fact of, right?
Mhm.
So we always say diversify, diversify, diversify. Get more diversity in here, and any way that you can, because you cannot guarantee where you're going to get your best information from. If you pre-chose, the wildfire community does this a lot. We're going to pre-select that the only people who are going to communicate on this crisis are other wildfire people because
Mhm.
they are obviously the experts. You've left out possibly your best insights. So diversity there and the equity side of it when it comes to the dynamics between people is there's no one on top of a totem pole in the chat space. Everyone is equal. And that's key, is that applies as well. And then the inclusion of everyone has a voice is a key thing. So the D and the E and the I play in a lot. And so that's the why I think that's part of the facilitator's role, is to understand those principles very deeply and ensure that those are the components of the soil so that the flowers can grow. So that's how that's interacting.
The reason I jumped on the DEI thing is because I do think there are legitimate reasons why people get upset about the DEI thing,
Hmm.
the way it's been framed.
Oh yeah,
And
sure.
I think that you just framed it in a really beautiful way that makes all kinds of sense, like every kind of sense. And
Mhm.
and that's what I think is so funny, is that this idea itself is like provably good. It's just
Yeah, and
provably helpful
we have
to a
evidence to
community.
it too.
Yeah,
We can
yeah,
actually go back in the evidence and say, when you didn't have a diverse conversation,
yeah.
Right.
you will try it out. Try a non-diverse conversation, and you'll see how very O club after the mission, you know, boy talk it'll be. Now diversify it with multiple genders. How about diversify it even further with multiple nationalities and then languages and mentalities and backgrounds and ages? And now you've got yourself one hell of a rich conversation.
Right.
Mhm.
Tell me that's not true. No one can probably argue that at all.
No.
Now you say, then make sure that if you go to a virtual space, going way back to our conversation, of choose how you're going to communicate to other people. Find a way to communicate in a space that it naturally comes with high diversity, equity for all, inclusion for all. And you're going to get much richer conversation than you would have had you shot an email out to 400 people that you already know, diversity low. That's going to be equity and inclusion is low too, because you've already chosen who's going to be in the group and no one else is allowed to join.
Right. It's
So
closed.
there's that, as out email fails, and your WhatsApps and your signals are the same way. Is go to a space that you've been told and you understand is as open as it can be right now. Except for one login to get in, you're in, and everyone is allowed to and encouraged to mix with each other. Then you can say, then I've got a pretty good space to be able to get some new ideas and to share my ideas openly and maybe do much more than I could have if I was not in a space like
Yeah.
that.
But you're driving towards a rich conversation. And the reason why you're driving towards a rich conversation is it solves problems better than
Yeah,
a narrow or poor conversation.
humans
But
have
so
to do it
even
that way.
that simple fact that a rich conversation can solve more problems is kind of like a learning that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, when we
Exactly.
when we came out, we started doing this for disasters, and I pitched, we're here to help people have conversations. Immediately the mindset was, well, just jibber jabber, just blah blah, how's your morning coffee kind of conversations. No, operational conversations. And it's still not clicking that that's how human race converses to work together to survive.
Right.
If
Right.
we didn't, and we were individuals on the planet, you could ask my colleague Jim Holt, we talk about this all the time. We will all have been dead long ago without our ability to converse and together to do things.
Right.
So we felt like if we were going to do this in a very technical space called Slack, yet we're going way back to initial human species communication to solve problems mentality, it's got to work.
Mm.
And so the problem is we have to still kind of work our way through policies and procedures. When we do incident command today, incident command system, national incident management system says you will do it this way and this way and this way, which is great. But they never say in the book how you're going to communicate with each other. They say, you figure it out. Just do it whatever, however way you want. So then they've lost all of their nuance that you need. And so we tell them, if you chose to use this method, as a crowd in an arena of aid people, aid arena,
Mm-hmm.
your chances of being successful are higher. And they sort of take me on trust. You sound like a pretty normal guy. Okay, I'll try it out. And then they just go, this is amazing. I should have had this long ago. So that's what we heard from LA and Helene. So we
Very
got about
cool.
700 folks there now, about 190 organizations. And we're waiting for the next disaster. AI, by the way,
Yes,
And
actually, that was a question I was going to ask you.
uh-huh. We had this concept way back when machine learning was a thing. Is
I remember
what
it
is the
fondly. Yes, machine.
you guys you guys have watched Star Trek Next Generation, right? You know,
Yes, of
with Captain Picard.
Yeah.
course.
Data, the character Data.
Yeah.
I always said we need a data in our chat rooms. We need natural human bots that just talk to us and say, I think you're talking about this. Can I help you with that? Can I
Yeah.
look this up for you? Can I be your go-getter guy?
Right.
And I think we're there yet. Because the AIs have rolled in. We have multiple different models working on information to provide into this chats. One of the things that was kind of interesting, and this is kind of a little story. I was talking to a gal that runs a company that does a virtual AI assisted concierge service called Guest OS. And the idea was you call in, you talk to this very natural sounding AI that says, can I help you with anything the hotel could provide for you? And blah, blah, blah. And that's how it does it. And it's based on information you feed into the model. So we had this conversation. I said, you could use that for disasters. You can have people call up and say, can you tell me if this
Oh,
bridge is
sure.
out? Is my neighborhood evacuated? When is the curfew going to be lifted? Where do I go for my animal shelter? I've got horses. Where, so 211 is a one-way out broadcast phone call in most districts, okay, in
Hmm.
LA, for example. 911 is a human, but man, that person is way overloaded and they're there for emergencies. So you have hotlines. Red Cross has a hotline, and they can only know so much. As an operator on the phone, you just know only so much. If you put AI behind it, and you fed that with tons of documentation and databases of disaster information, what could it do? So they turned that loose. We had that conversation on January the 2nd, I think it was, and the 7th of January, we had the LA fire. So
Mm.
we put it into immediate use. So she was using it for people helping to find housing and hundreds of calls and that psychological, oh my gosh, I was just talking to a person. So I've adapted it into 8 Arena helpline or hotline, excuse me. And we're going to feed it information about the disasters as they happen because we want the person with a flip phone to call up and say, I don't do chat. I'm not going to do chat. I just need to know where can I take my horses? I have a ranch. I've got cattle. We've got no hay. It's all been burned up. Where can I get some hay? And have that human on the phone talk with information that's known, as well as, hold on, let me find an expert for you. And it sends a message into our chats. And the experts say, oh, yeah, we got the answer for you right here. Hit go. And it goes right back into their ear while they're standing in the middle of their field.
Mm.
We think that's going to be one of those humanity connectors.
Mm.
I don't want to serve just the people who are the professionals at this. I want to serve the everybody. And in many parts of the world, data is not necessarily always available. A Slack app, a chat app, maybe not, but a phone, yeah.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
hum and a nice sounding human voice when you're having a crappy morning with your kids and your house is burned. You just need somebody to
That's a
guide
pretty
you.
crappy morning when your house is burned.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's who was calling. And
Yeah.
it's either that or nothing, so let them call to something. And if the AI can't answer the question, it gets put into a queue and then somebody works on it. And so we have lots of technologists who are chewing on ideas like that, bringing in
Mm.
AI, bringing in science, the big nature, big data people, cloud people.
Well, do you
They
think
do
But
have.
everyone wants,
do you think the AI can be the facilitators? Do you think the AI
facilitators
can
for,
replace human facilitators?
no, especially you tell my colleague Jim Hole, he'll tell you absolutely no. I personally don't think so yet because I have a feeling that there's still a deep, rich intuition that comes with that watching human language thing. It can certainly help me though. If I needed to find out quickly, tell me just based on the reviewing the chats in this
Hmm.
space for the last 6 months, who would probably be the expert on this topic,
Right.
Hmm.
just based on their language. And it tells you, I can tell you that these are probably the top 3 people who can speak to horses and shelters. Okay, good, good. I'll just get a lead. That's it. But yeah, for sure, help me. But to facilitate, I think they want to know that they're talking to a human, but also I think intuition
That's
is a big
true.
one.
Kind of the
I
yeah.
think you got to be clear that you're talking, whether you're talking to a human or an AI. And
Right.
if you're talking to an AI and it's doing like first line responding, you want to, this is exciting to me because love to be involved in making this more compassionate, but you want to make sure its first job is to respond compassionately. If you're
Yes.
just right, and then that's almost as important as getting correct information,
Yeah.
and maybe it's more important, right?
That's probably the single biggest thing for a helpline that's a human answerer. They're trained in the
Mhm.
first 10 seconds
Mm.
of tell me what's going on.
Yeah. And so if it could say like I'm an AI that's been trained to respond in emergencies, I might not do a good job, but let's see what we can do or something like that.
See, perfect. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. Oh, no, we
And
should talk
you
about
can
this
train
because
her.
this
Yeah.
is this is key is how is it framed? How is the AI framed? And it's if it's framed as sort of like a student who's learning to do this,
Yeah.
people are much more willing to talk with it
Interesting.
than if
Yeah.
if
So
it's like I'm
we're
the
going to be the
expert,
guinea
I'm going
pig.
to help you. Yeah.
That's right. We're going to be the guinea pig for this in disasters to learn those lessons of how to do it right, safely,
Mm.
accurately. Bad
Mm.
information is bad information, but also psychologically, when we say it's a hotline, how to frame it correctly, because we're the first to adapt this kind of technology into a disaster.
Yeah.
Going forward, we want to be let's say a prototyper of methodologies to make sure that it's perceived correctly by the average person with a flip phone. You shouldn't have
Yes.
to have any more knowledge.
That's
Right.
right.
And that way it can be a helper of ultimately to get them resources and get them people to help them.
Right.
I also want the professionals using it. Like if you're in the Red Cross and you're forward and you're just on your phone, you basically say, okay, yeah, there's a bridge out. Here's the location. I'm seeing 4 houses along the street that are burned as well. Report complete. And it
Mm.
goes into the system to a database,
Right. Right.
So,
We're at time, so that's my official role is to
yeah,
be the timekeeper.
That's
But
true.
I am reminded, we've already gone through one transition, uh, like moved ourselves one step away from humans with all these voicemail and stupid
yeah.
voicemail menus. And whenever I'm at an airport and a flight's been delayed, you can hear everybody around you going, agent, agent, they don't want to deal with it.
Talk
Right.
to a person.
And then something made me think of this little silly story uh about voicemail. So my grandmother, of blessed memory, didn't speak English, only Spanish.
Yeah,
And she died in 2003, right when the whole voicemail thing, well, not just voicemail, but that you would get automated calls, like from or not hotels, hospitals or doctor's offices.
sure, sure, sure.
So my parents had an answering machine, and they had told my grandmother, just don't pick up the phone. The answering machine will take care of it. But she kept forgetting. She was in her early 90s. We get
Sure.
home one day and she goes, "Oh, I think the hospital called." And we're like, And she goes,
Oh,
"But it's okay because somebody else got on the phone and the two started talking to each other. So I hung up." And so you know what happened, right? Voice one, your appointment for voice two, Tuesday, 3 March. Voice one has been canceled, right? So she figured, oh, okay, it's all fine. So
They'll
they
work it
had a
out
great
between themselves.
conversation.
so there's no message. She hung up. They'll figure it out. And I don't know. That's one of my favorite stories about my grandmother because it just cracks me up.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? How we choose to communicate and then how we look at
Yeah.
when technology takes hold.
Yes.
There's a curve of technology at growth like this in society, and there's adaptation that's like
Oh, of
this.
course.
And
Yeah.
so you always have this growing gap of people who just don't get it. And I'm a techie. I mean, I've been that way since high school. I went to the same high school as Steve Jobs and
Oh,
Wozniak, and
wow.
I grew up in the geek factory. And so for me, that's no problem. But let's assume there's always going to be a technical gap wherever we can. Let's
Yes.
take modern tech, but then somehow roll it back
Yep.
a few million years
Yeah.
to let's get back to conversation and
Yeah.
let
Mm-hmm.
that be the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And data tools, plenty of them. Have at it. Do lots of good stuff with data tools and information tools. But as long as you know that there's one space where you can do what naturally humans do and just converse, that I think is you got to have that in the mix.
throughout this conversation, I've been imagining Socrates wherever he is, he or she, well, Socrates was a man, but wherever he is, kind
He
of
was taught by a
going,
woman, by the
I
way.
told you, yes, that's right. I told you it was about conversation because
Mhm.
that's
Isn't it
something
always?
that he strongly believed in. And one of the reasons why he was opposed to written language was, well, one was because he thought it would lead memory to deteriorate, but two, because it sort of replaced conversation, which he didn't think was a
I
good
wonder what
idea.
Socrates would have thought of written conversation versus monologue.
Mm.
Because back in
Oh,
his day, well, if you took all the time to write something
yeah,
down, you're basically
yeah,
writing a monologue of
right,
your thought.
right.
But
Mhm.
if you knew that you could write and instantly somebody writes you back, and you write back and you write back, I wonder if that
I
would
wonder
be
if that would
seen
have
as
changed his.
conversation.
And you know what you've just made me think of is how quick or appreciate the significance of how quickly the Greeks moved into plays.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Very interesting thing
Oh yeah.
that the Greeks, they got the language thing going and they have, more of a leisure society and they have an annual play festival where everybody competes to get the best plays. And plays are,
Conversation.
in their
Yes.
way, I mean, they're
Yeah.
sort of stilted, but they are
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
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 And it
That's
and it
really
hits a
interesting.
nerve. The audience, it hits a nerve of
Yes,
making the meaning.
exactly.
Well, it's
They don't
dramatic
get
because in
droned
the
out.
moment, it's not just a bunch of people saying things.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
they're
something
actors,
could
yeah.
respond, etc.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
So I think that's a good point to end because we've
I do
gotten
too.
all the way to Socrates, and that is always a good thing.
Well, thank you,
That
Jonesy,
was
for being
always the
here.
plan.
Yes,
That
Oh,
was
that
it's
we
was
been
were we
great
always the
talking
planned
to you
it.
guys.
plan. I
We
had it
planned it
from the
along.
very beginning.
It was always the plan. Yep. So
Anyway,
anyway,
well,
we'll keep doing what we do. And I just want to say thank you for guys for having such great conversations with the folks when they call. And I'll let the audience know truly no prep here.
no,
And that's
never.
the way it should be. It should be
Hmm.
that way of just impromptu discussion. And I think that keep doing it because you're helping other people discover what they probably didn't think they needed to ask for. And
Mm.
Hmm.
so watching your conversations is just a way to just follow along and go, wow, I had no idea,
Right.
you know.
Thank you. That's high praise.